So now let's talk about the variable pattern. So variable pattern is kind of like table driven pattern, but here it offers you more options than table driven pattern. So I have this plate, and on this plate I have created this whole feature, and I just want to create a few patterns from this whole feature. So for that I'll go to this variable pattern option, and the first thing that we need to select here is the feature which we want to pattern. So of course I want to pattern this whole feature, so I'll select cut extrude. That's this one. And now the next thing that we need to select is create pattern table. Click here, and that's going to open the pattern table, which doesn't look very interesting, but let's just make it interesting now. Well, the first thing that we need to do here is add a few columns. We just have one column here. The first is instance, and then we have the second one, which is instances to skip. So not very descriptive, of course. So I'll just click on this 14 dimension, and that's going to add the next column, which is dimension 2. So that's dimension 2. I'll click here, and that's dimension 1. All right, so 2 of these are added. Now again, this isn't very descriptive. So this is D2, this is D1, but we don't know which one is length, which one is width. So it is better if we just rename these D1 and D2 dimensions. Also, if we just rename these two other dimensions, which we are going to use in a moment. So I'll just cancel out this one, and also I'll cancel this variable pattern. And now I'll go to this cut extrude feature, sketch, and edit sketch. All right, inside this sketch, I've got 4 of these dimensions, which I'm going to rename. Well, the first one is this. So that's 14, and its name is, well, D2. So let's just make it columns. All right. And now here, this is the gap of row. So let's just make it rows. All right. And then we have the ellipse. So we have the length of ellipse here. So double click this one too. So I'll double click here, and this is length, and this is width or height, whatever you want to call it. So I'll just call it width. Now these names are very descriptive and we can use it. So let's exit out of this sketch, and once again I'll go to variable pattern, and I'll select again the cut extrude feature. All right, and I'll select create pattern table. Now once again, let's just select some dimensions. So the first one is this, and now we have columns here instead of that D2 name, and then we have rows here instead of D1. Now these are very descriptive and we can use it in a meaningful way. Now also, let's just select these dimensions. So we have the width and the length of ellipses. So we basically have 4 rows here, and as you can see, it is not kind of fitting this thing properly. So you can just expand it, or you can also just change the gap of these columns just by moving it kind of like this. So you can just decrease the gap of this as well. All right, so there we are. Now let's add a few rows here as well. So you can just type number of rows which you want to add. Maybe I'll just type 5 here, and I'll click here to add instances, and now we have 5 rows added here. So this table now looks almost like the table driven pattern. So here, well, let me just maybe increase the size instead of changing all these sizes individually. So there we are, we've got this table, and the first one is this instance. So that's instance number 0, which is at a distance of 14 unit along columns, at a distance of 10 unit along row, and that's the dimension of this instance. Now this is instance number 1. So first copy, where do you want to make it? Well, currently all the copies are made right above this one, so they're kind of overlapping, which we don't want. So in this case, I'll change the distance here. So this is 14. Let's just make it 20. All right, and this one 26. So we are using a gap of 6 unit here. So 14, 20, 26. Now you don't need to fill all the other cells if you are using a linear pattern here. So I'm using a 6 unit gap here. So all I need to do is just select these 3 cells, click this arrow right here, and drag it all the way down. So let me just do that again. So I'll just select it, and there we are. When this plus sign shows up, drag it all the way down, and there we are. We have got the 20, 26, and then at the interval of 6 unit, it will add 32, 38, 44, and so on. All right, so that's added. Now the next thing is rows. Now before we add that, let's just use the same distance for rows. And with that, we'll just click on update preview. And this is what we are going to get. So we'll get 5 of these, and they are still kind of overlapping, as you can see, because of very small distance. So we are just using a gap of 6 unit, and as you can see, it's length is 16, so of course it's not going to work properly. You just need to use a distance which is greater than 16. So in this case, let's change it again. So this is 14, and the next distance which I'm going to use here is 30 unit, which is exactly equal to, well, 16. So maybe let's use 32 now. So I'll use 32 and I'll press the tab key. Now for all the other cells, once again, I'll just select these two, and now I'll let SolidWorks do the work for me. So automatically it will use the same gap and fill all the remaining cells. Click update preview, and now we have a meaningful kind of preview here. So now the gap is 18 units between all of these objects. So that's added. Now what if we also want to change the gap along rows? So here, if you want to change it for a few instances, then you can do that here. If you don't want to change it just for a few, if you want to change it for all of these, you can again use the same method which I used, but here let's just change it for a few of these. So for instance number 2, I will double click here and I'll change this gap from 10 to 30. All right, and for this instance, I'll just make it 50. All right. And again, update preview, and this is what we are going to get. So that's the gap of 30 and that's the gap of 50. Now in a similar way, you can just add as many rows as you want and as many instances of this main object. Now not only that, you can also change the shape of main object. So as you can see, the main object has this shape. It is 16 and this one is 5. Let's say you want to change it for this object. Now this happens to be this instance number 7. When I'm selecting it, you can clearly see that this is highlighting this one. So for this one, I want to increase the length and width. So let's just change the length first and let's just make it 30 unit. All right, and width, well, I'll just make it 12. So we now have a completely different ellipse for this one. This should be bigger. So let's click preview, and as expected, we have a completely different kind of preview for this one. Now if you want to skip a few instances, for example maybe this last one, just click here and that's going to skip this one. Update preview, there we are. And finally just click OK, and here we have this variable pattern.